This is all about armor. Did you know that there are 3 types of mobs in the game? Paladin, Warrior, and Mage type. Warriors have the most armor, Mages have the least, and Paladins are in between. These are the armor values for each mob type. Warriors have 4,638, Paladins got 3,731, and Mages have a measly 3,009. If you had no debuffs up on a boss, a mage would take 35.4% less damage, based on the armor formula, which is defined by the attacker's level. That's what determines that 5,500 there. If we are instead talking about a boss attacking you, that number would be 5,755. So if your level's higher, armor hurts you less. Anyways, Paladins, they got about 3.7k armor, and that means that they do about 40.4% less damage. Warriors, 4.6k, so 45.7% less damage. There are other things that mob classification impacts, but this video is about hidden stuff. So this is going to be all about armor, not mob behavior. We're going to focus on Classic WoW at level 60, but this stuff does apply to Burning Crusade too. You just need to go to some TBC database website to actually go check out what the armor of different bosses are in TBC, and you'd have to swap out to the level 70 armor formula. Remember, we're using level 61. Now, let's talk about those mob types. Most mobs are Paladins, the next most common is Mage, and Warrior is exceptionally rare, unlike people playing the class. Let's list all the Warrior type bosses real quick. Molten Core only has one, that would be Sulfur Harbinger. And that's it, there's no other Warrior type mobs in 40 mans, isn't that absolutely absurd? Let's talk about Mage type, it's a little more common. In Molten Core, you have Lucifron, Gehennis, and Shaz as Mage types. In AQ40, there's Scarum. And in Naxx, only Kel'Thuzad is a mage type. So not a whole lot of mages either. Every other boss is a paladin. They all have 3,731 armor, which, as we said before, means they're taking about 40% less damage if you don't debuff them. So let's cover the debuff list, and we're going to get into how to take action with this information. These are all the armor debuffs in Classic WoW, at least the ones you should consider. There are others, but they don't stack with everything on this list. Generally, any other armor debuff you find in the game will compete with Fairy Fire slot, such as Riven Spike, for example, or Bash Gooder. Anyways, let's dig into the effects. Sunder is the big one. It's 5 stacks, and it gets to 2,250 armor pen. You could use Expose Armor instead of Sunder. It's only 1,700 without talents, so it's pointless, but when it's talented, you get 2,550 armor pen, which is 300 extra. We'll get into when that's valuable. Fairy Fire, on the other hand, is bigly. It's always amazing. You should use it all the time. It's 505 armor pen. It has no downsides, unlike Curse of Wreck, which takes off 640 armor, but it also makes the boss hit around 10% harder if there's excess AP left on the boss. If you properly optimize all your attack power debuffs, the boss will still be at 0 AP even with this up on them, but your raid probably fucks that up because most raids do. Now, the final way to reduce armor is to have someone use Annihilator. This weapon sucks ass to use, and it also works in TBC in case you want to torture one of your friends. Please don't have anybody use this thing unless you're going for like 100 parse. Anyways, remember, we want to hit these armor values. 3,009 penetration for mages, 3,731 for paladins, and 4,638 for Sulfur and Harbinger, because he's the only fucking warrior in the whole game. Now, anyways, Fairy Fire has no negatives and no competition, so assume it's always up. We can reduce the numbers now, so you need 2,500 for mages, about 3,200 for paladins, and 4,100 for Harbinger. All of the mage-type mobs in the game auto-attack fairly low, except for Kel'Thuzad, but he doesn't generally kill your tank with auto-attacks anyway, so let's assume we always have Curse of Wreck up on the mage bosses. That puts them just shy of 2,000 armor, so you may as well lay off your rogue players and just use 3 debuffs on all the mages. Sunder, Fairy Fire, and Curse of Wreck. Badge of the Swarm Guard will do nothing for you on these fights, except Lucifron, because you could cleave the ads and they normally won't have armor debuff stacks on them, but I don't know, that might not even be a DPS increase for you anyways. Now for Paladins, which is basically everything in the game. If you use Sunder, Fairy Fire, and Curse of Wreck, they're going to have 3,395 armor reduction on them. This is actually 336 short of 0 armor on the boss. Using the armor formula, you'd find that 336 divided by, that shit on the bottom, it's a pretty high number. It's 5.8% less damage taken from physical. Pretty high. Put another way, it's more damage left on the table than if you G-kicked the lowest 2 DPS warriors in 38-man your raid. Honestly, probably if you G-kicked the 4 worst DPS warriors in your group, which is fucked, you'd still be better off than having the boss to have 336 armor. Now, you can get this final armor removed by having a bunch of people use Annihilator, which would make you an asshole. Or you can banish one rogue player and have them fall on their sword and use Expose Armor. I feel so bad for those motherfuckers, but if you do that, the boss, the paladin bosses that is, they'll only have 36 armor left, which means that they'll take 0.6% less physical damage. Pretty good. So, what have we found so far? On the mages, you use the standard debuffs. Your rogues, they get to be free. No fucking improved expose armor. Another reason why you wouldn't on the mages is because it takes a second to get expose armor up, so you should normally pre-sunder and then have the rogues override it, alright? So that's why it makes complete sense to always assume on the mage you're going to sunder. You're not going to save anybody anything by having the rogue do an expose armor. On everything else, those fucking idiots need to use expose armor though, alright? And on Sulfur and Harbinger, you can even rationally use Badge of the Swarm Guard while single targeting the boss, which is the only time you'd ever use this item if not for Cleave. Well, besides Trash, and if you're curious how much armor Trash has, generally it's 3,000 to 3,700 armor. A few mobs have like 2,000. Generally, if you want to optimize your raid's Trash DPS, you treat every mob in the Trash packs like they're a Paladin boss, and you hit them with every debuff except Expose Armor, because it just takes too long to get that up. Unless it's the huge dogs and AQ40. God, I fucking hate those things. They last a while, so you should use Expose Armor on them, in my opinion. Now, another thing, remember, don't use Annihilator. It makes somebody hate their time raiding. You can make one of your boys use this if you need to get a fucking 100 parse, but otherwise, just who needs that crap? Now, finally, here is a table of all the armor values in case you're kinda autistic. Anyways, my name is Jake. I like math, and I hope to live rent-free in your head. That way you click all my shit, and YouTube gives me more views. If this video pissed you off for some reason, please go comment about how much it annoyed you. That will surely impact my channel in a negative way. Hell, comment on all my videos just to teach me a lesson. Thanks, guys. Oh, if you have any good ideas for a video, go ahead and leave a comment. This isn't like engagement baiting. I don't give a fuck if you leave a comment. But if you have a good idea, let me know, because otherwise I might run out of videos one day, and then this might become a stupid React channel. Okay? Peace.